You're listening to the 40 Fit Radio podcast, dedicated to the 40-plus community. Join us as we discuss the truth about fitness and health using science, reason, and the experiences of our host and content experts. Welcome to the 40 Fit Nation. Welcome back to the 40 Fit Radio podcast, and welcome back to the 40 Fit Nation. We're going to talk about something that I have avoided talking about for a while now. And as Trent and I were getting ready for today's episode, we were going to talk about endurance programming. He really wanted us to hit that topic subject. And I think we're going to hit that in our next couple of podcasts, is on how can you write a program for developing conditioning or endurance in varying levels of trainees. So if you're a trainee out there and you're a very low skilled, low conditioned individual, we're going to talk about that. If you're an intermediate or if you're an advanced individual, we're going to talk about that too. And we're going to talk about how I like to program and what programming model I used. And as we were talking about this, I said, I really do use a lot of the stuff that I learned when I was a CrossFit coach, and I still am a certified CrossFit trainer, a CCFT. That's a level 3 trainer. I think they have 4 levels, and I'm a level 3, whatever that is. But I've had a lot of experience in a lot of their continuing education series and their modeling, and I refer to their programming model because I do think when you're talking about strict endurance or conditioning programming, CrossFit does have kind of this linear progression that can be measured and can be developed over time in a programming template. But we're going to talk about that in the next couple episodes.
Right.
But what that led us to was this conversation about why I don't use the entire methodology of CrossFit now and their development hierarchy in the way that I train individuals in our gym today.
Right.
So I guess we could call this episode Strength versus CrossFit, why Coach D left CrossFit. But I want to preface this whole podcast with the fact that I didn't leave CrossFit. If you want to think of it as a business owner, I sold all 3 of my CrossFit gyms.
Yeah.
Purely as a business owner. And there are various reasons why I did that. So we can talk about that. But this is not a bash CrossFit podcast because I think there's a lot of good things and there's a lot of good people. I still have a lot of friends. I have a lot of colleagues, and in the field of CrossFit, I have friends that still own gyms that I'm very close with, and I support them. I think they're doing more for the general population fitness in their community than 9 out of 10 gyms are.
Yeah. Let's be real. CrossFit got barbells into the hands of a lot of people that never
hundreds
of
thousands of people.
Yeah.
Especially in the weightlifting. When I say weightlifting, I'm talking about the sport of Olympic weightlifting.
Right. Yeah. Not just barbells, but also weightlifting. Yeah.
Right. And they brought the clean and jerk and snatch basically to almost any household that wanted to perform those movements,
right.
And do that discipline. But they also brought a lot of the big barbell lifts to a lot of people that have never really been exposed to that because of they started in a CrossFit gym somewhere.
Right. And I think what I really admire about CrossFit is, and not the first. It's not the first kind of, I don't want to call it a program, but you know what I mean. It's not the first thing to push hard physical exercise, but certainly one of the most recent. Right. Like I remember P90X coming out when the early to mid 2000s maybe, and that was the first time in a while a major mainstream program said, hey, if you want to get results, you got to work hard.
Yeah.
And then CrossFit came and really put a face on that and said, got the idea that hard physical training was not just for athletes, but for regular people that want to get results, you got to do hard things. And that's, certainly a basis of, we talk about all the time with strength training too.
If you want adaptation, you got to stress it. And
that's right.
So, I think that, CrossFit started, mid 2000s, early 2000s, and with Greg Glassman's. Greg and Laura Glassman were co-owner, own CrossFit together, husband and wife. And he started it, in his gym in Southern California. And, I think if you go back to the roots of, we could have, it's just so difficult to talk about because we could talk about 1,000 different topics within this topic. 1,000 different reasons why, I believe this or they believe this, or I believe this or they believe this. And I mean, we could have several different, over 100 conversations on these various areas or elements of discussion when it comes to training individuals and all the different philosophy and the methodology and the theoretical constructs that go into what cause us to think the way we do and act the way we do within our gyms. But at the end of the day, I think what I saw was this basically, and this is it in a nutshell. This is why I sold my gyms. Over the 10 years of owning 3 different locations, 3 different gyms, I owned CrossFit Fort Worth. I think I was the 3rd affiliate in all of North Texas. I don't remember what my affiliate number was, but my affiliate fee was really low for my first gym. So I was, I don't know, top 1,000 affiliates or something like that. I don't know where we were. At the end of the day, we owned 3 different gyms, and I had a partner in one of the gyms. The reason why I sold the gyms was because probably I took the starting strength course in 2011. I became a starting strength coach in 2011 and didn't really do much with it at all. I believed in it basically as this is a great way to do barbell training. And I implemented a lot of the starting strength modeling for barbell training early on in our gym. Right around 2011, 2 ladies went to the course with me in Wichita Falls. Uh-huh. We all took the course together. They were coaches in my gym. One was named Candace and the other one was named Athena. And we took that course together. We all sat for the platform test. We all passed the platform test. That would not happen today. We got in easy.
It was a different time.
And I know that. And I had read the book or read most of the book, but I had a lot of things wrong. I mean, the book is great, but I tell you what, you learn so much by going to the seminar, and you learn so much by being around the community of people,
right?
And being around the strength coaches that have done this for longer periods of time. And so the certification, I think that was early on in the certificate process, to where I want to say maybe 2010 or 2011 was the first year that they did their certificate process. And I went because it was recommended by CrossFit, or CrossFit had recommended it because Rip used to teach the barbell course for CrossFit. And he knew Glassman, and it was one of the continuing education, one of the seminar series for CrossFit. And I went to the course, and, right off the bat, Rip's character, and you find that out. And he was having a falling out with CrossFit. Actually, he had already had it, I believe. And so there was some discussion at the seminar about CrossFit, and we just kind of disregarded it at the time. Plus, he knew I was a PT, and he hammered me for that, and I disregarded that at the time.
Like two of his favorite topics right there.
Yeah, as best I could. And so so I took the seminar, and we all sat for the platform test. We all passed the platform test. Then we got the written test. I think they mailed it at the time. They may have emailed it. I think they may have emailed it. And I was the only one out of 3 that took the written test, and I passed the written. So I became a starting strength coach. But from that time, 2011 until probably around 2013 or 14, around 2014 probably, I didn't do anything with it. I just used the knowledge to program in our gyms.
Yeah.
And then one day I was perusing the Starting Strength website for the coaches, or the startingstrength.org site, and I noticed that, I guess, a certificate of maintenance or continuation of maintenance that was required so that you could keep your certification. And I contacted them like, hey, we don't even know who you are. We haven't heard from you or seen you in 3 or 4 years, 4 or 5 years maybe. And you need to come audit a seminar. So I went and audited a seminar immediately. I did my literature review that was required, started becoming involved, reread the book, and just started to absorb more of the community and learn more about the model of starting strength and how I could use that in my gyms. And what over the next year to 18 months, I began to start to realize how much just junk there was in most CrossFit gyms, especially on the programming side, and also on the actual event of training membership, and how members were being trained and where they were being placed in programming, and how they were being, I guess you would say, what level of programming they were given when they were new trainees.
Right.
And the number one thing that always glared right in front of me that I could not deny was that if you want to be a better CrossFitter, plain and simple, you got to be stronger. You got to be stronger. So I had several CrossFit athletes that were higher level athletes, good athletes, and some that were just normal everyday people in the gym. And they contacted me and said, hey, we know you're doing more strength bias programming. Would you program for us and coach us? I said, yes. I said, but I want you to know up front, I'm basically going to do barbell coaching with you, and we're going to use a starting strength model. You just need to know that up front. They're like, great. They came to my gym. I had a handful of people that came to me that way that I did programming for, or one-on-one coaching or remote coaching with them. And what ended up happening was they all became better CrossFitters. Significantly better CrossFitters. They all had better, better open placing. Their skill levels all got better. Their ability to tolerate metabolic conditioning and high intensity workouts got better. Everything got better just by making them stronger.
Sure.
And some of these individuals have been doing CrossFit for 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah.
And they were stuck at a plateau that no one at their gym could get them through. And that was because when you look at the 10 general physical skills, and we know what those are, strength, power, endurance, agility, coordination, balance, speed, accuracy, stamina, flexibility, mobility. When you look at all those 10 general physical skills, they all rely on one central skill, and that's strength. And I just looked at them. I said, you know what? When I look at your strength numbers, I had them send me all their numbers first, all these different individuals I trained. I said, send me like your 1 rep max, your 3 rep max, your 5 rep max on the back squat, on the deadlift, on the press, and then on some accessory lifts. Now, send me your conditioning times or your workout times on Fran, Nancy, Linda, all these different workouts. If you've done Murph, send me your Murph time, And what I noticed was, I had them send me their monostructural times too. I'm like, how long does it take you to do a 1,000-meter row? Best time on a 1,000-meter row, 2,000-meter row, 5,000-meter row. What's your best Tabata score on air squats or whatever it was? And I used all these different metrics. And what I noticed was that by and large, all these individuals were under strength. So I made them reasonably stronger, and they got better at being CrossFitters. So I started to apply that into my gyms. And I hate to admit this, but I had a tremendous amount of pushback from not only my membership, but also my coaching staff. And I love my coaches. I still love them. I still love those guys. They're great guys. But it just got to where they kind of felt like I was throwing the baby out with the bathwater, that we weren't doing CrossFit anymore. And that wasn't the case. But it was going to take some more focused effort to get our membership up to a strength level where they could be better at CrossFit.
So did you find that the pushback was from the fact that, maybe some of the members that were being put into a strength cycle felt like they were going backwards in terms of their conditioning so that they could work on the strength? Or was it just simply that they had an expectation that CrossFit was going to look a certain way and this looked different? I
think it was both. I think there are probably many different reasons based on each individual. Some people walked into a CrossFit gym because they had an idea they saw the games. And they saw that these people do these crushing workouts, and it's got all these different movements,
lots
all these
of different
skill levels, and every now and then you would see a barbell in the workout, and so you got to do that too, but that should come in the form of a workout. That should come in the form of a metabolic conditioning workout, not necessarily that you would do it 3 times a week in a strength cycle. And the problem was that when they looked at other CrossFit gyms, they would do strength cycles. So they would do strength work for maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and then they wouldn't really do strength work, or they would do it very seldomly for another 12 to 16 weeks.
Okay.
And then they would do another strength cycle.
Yeah.
But what they don't understand is that strength is not maintained and built like that.
Right.
You can't metabolic conditioning without regular barbell strength training, and the frequency is going to be based on the individual trainee, how old they are, how much athletic experience they have, how much lifting experience they have, where they are in their development as an athlete, and maximum genetic potential, all these different factors. And it becomes very individualized. And so you can't take the general population and say, we're going to do a 6-week strength cycle. Now we're not going to really focus on strength for 6 more weeks.
Right.
Well, all those gains that you have, you keep some of those gains, but all the top tier and maybe even pretty far down, strength gets lost to conditioning. And so the strength training is ongoing. And so the philosophy was just different. The way I thought about how we should do things, and it was all based on science and reason and logic and the reading that I had done and my individual experience, not only as a coach, but also as a CrossFit athlete myself.
So do you think maybe the conception of what strong was an issue? So, in the barbell world, we kind of get numb to big numbers because we see, it's not unusual to see an average Joe middle-aged guy squatting 315 plus for reps.
Yeah. Well, I think there's.
And do you think was that seen as something as being just kind of an outlier strength? So
no. I think there's a lot of crazy strong people in CrossFit. Wickedly,
sure. Yeah, you look at the games athletes; they're all very strong.
It's
very,
crazy.
Very strong.
There are guys with 8%, 6% body fat that weigh 195 pounds and they're squatting, in the fives. I mean, they're deadlifting. I don't know very many of them deadlifting the sixes, but they're very strong, extremely strong. But you know how they get strong for the games?
They strength train.
They train
Exactly.
like a bodybuilder or a weightlifter or a barbell.
That's what I'm getting at. Is so was the general population that was coming to your gyms, were they seeing the games and thinking that the training ought to look like the games, and not realizing that probably those top athletes are doing things differently in their training than what their performance looks like?
I think it's a combination. I think that's part of it. I think it's the fact that when you have trained individuals for so long to get hot, sweaty, and tired, and they no longer get hot, sweaty, and tired, and they no longer have that massive adrenaline rush or that massive high-intensity interval rush that you get from training and that high that you get from it, like a runner's high.
Yeah.
And then you make them barbell train. And here is the funny thing. I was programming conditioning all along the way, too. There was a conditioning workout programmed every single day. And there was a barbell workout programmed every single day in cycles. And so what I did was I took the novice linear progression. I took the novice program on the ABA, BAB rotation, and I programmed it out for Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. So based on when members wanted to come, they could do their strength work. And on the off days of their strength work, or on the same day, they could do a short Metcon or a short conditioning workout afterwards. And I would modify those things on the fly for them. But see, what this took was actually coaching.
Yeah.
This took coaching. This took methodology. I love what Doug Eads said on our podcast with Doug's Gym. And he said, why the reason machines came around was because they had to dumb it down. Basically, they had to train the masses,
right? Yeah.
And so you couldn't have all these really high-end, knowledgeable coaches on the floor coaching all these individuals. So what'd you do? You created a bunch of machines, and people could just go over to the machines and do it.
The machine only goes one way, so
right. So if you're in a CrossFit gym, it's all about volume. Even though it's kind of the mix in between what we do,
right,
price point wise, and what a Globo gym does, but it's still all about volume.
Yeah.
And you got to have enough athletes to pay your bills. And these facilities are usually fairly large, 2,000 square feet or more.
Right. Yeah.
And you've got coaches that, they're earning a pretty good hourly wage. And so, at the end of the day, you're just programming workouts to deal with general fitness of the masses. The problem is that the developmental hierarchy, the theory of developmental hierarchy no longer became my theory of developmental hierarchy. And so if you look at CrossFit, if you look at there's a classical article that Greg Glassman wrote. And by the way, and I said this earlier, there's a lot of stuff that I agree with Greg Glassman and CrossFit and a lot of the individuals that were the kind of the founding athletes of CrossFit and the way that they think about programming and other things. We all agree on a ton. We agree on more things than we disagree.
Sure. Yeah.
But what's happened now is that the practical application of what's being taught in the gyms is significantly different from what the foundations of CrossFit were built on.
Yeah.
And I think right now what you see, and you could say there's a lot of different reasons why Glassman and the organization are doing this. I think right now you see a pull away from the games a little bit, more focus on the local affiliates, more focus on the older population, even though I don't agree with how they're approaching that, but more focus on that. And I think that's because, and I think Glassman wrote in a recent article and on a video that he did, he's trying to meet the needs of the affiliates and meet the needs of the local community. And I think the sport of CrossFit's great, and it's brought a lot of notoriety to CrossFit, but I think the key is the day in, day out training of that average member in a local gym.
Right.
And so I think the best way to do that, and this is where we differ, is, and this is why I sold my gyms, because I had such a difficult process trying to get my coaches on board and my membership on board. And there were a lot of members that agreed with the methodology, enjoyed the methodology. They felt better. They felt stronger. They saw the results. I had one female member who said, I do not want to do this barbell program. I said, well, you have an option. You can train somewhere else. And I did tell her that.
Yeah.
She was at my North Fort Worth gym. And I said, and I don't mean that in a nasty or bad way. I said, you can train somewhere else where they'll just get you hot, sweaty, and tired, but they'll have no real desire to help you maximize your genetics and improve yourself as a person overall. And she stayed. And she did barbell training. And she was a rather large, tall girl and a little bit bigger boned girl. And she couldn't do a single pull-up before we started the strength cycle. And we didn't do a lot of pull-ups as part of the strength cycle. We did the deadlift, the squat, the press, and the bench press. And she went through the whole strength cycle. And at the end of it, she did 3 strict pull-ups. And she had never done pull-ups before. And so she gained her lean mass. She lost some fat mass because we helped her control her macros and her diet. And she did some conditioning too. But the bulk of her program was barbell training. And she's like, I can't believe this. I was like, it works. See, it works. And so we make people reasonably stronger. So if we look at the pyramid that CrossFit has, which is the kind of the theoretical hierarchy of the development of an athlete, at the bottom of the pyramid is nutrition. Right up above it is metabolic conditioning. Right up above that is gymnastics. Right up above that is weightlifting and throwing. And then right up above that is sport. And I would propose this, that pyramid is a little off. The bottom of the pyramid should be strength. It should be strength.
Right.
So I guess you would put weightlifting there or barbell lifting there, whatever your model is. But the base of it should be strength. And it should be strength training, true strength training in that rep cycle of 1 to 10 reps, kind of in that range, with sets and reps structured.
Progressive overload.
On a linear progression
yeah.
of overload over time until they basically reach the top of that plateau. And then you reset, you deload, then you do it again. You probably do it one more time. So you put them in a novice barbell program. Okay, that's the start. Now, obviously, if an individual can't squat their body weight or they can't squat a barbell's weight, a technique barbell that maybe weighs 15 pounds or even less, some of them weigh like 12 pounds. You can get a 5 kilo one, I think, 5 kilogram bar from Rogue, and it weighs 12 pounds, I think. If they can't squat that bar, then they may have to do body weight squats.
Sure.
Which then you might call that gymnastics, but it's really not. It's body weight movements would be things like raising your arms up overhead, bending over and picking up something off the floor, and being able to sit to stand, and then being able to go from a lying to a standing position. Those are body weight movements.
Right.
Being able to move your body in space and time.
Fundamental body weight movements.
Fundamental movements, right? And that's what barbell training is. It's the fundamental movements.
With load.
That's right, with load.
Exactly.
But if an individual can't do that, then we have a model that we can use. We can have them do air squats. We can have them do like a kettlebell squat or a dumbbell squat. Then we could put them on a leg press machine. We could start them on a leg press machine too if you have access to one.
Right.
And then we could build them up to a technique bar. And then we could go to a 35-pound bar. And then we could go to a 45-pound bar and add load over time. So, but really what we're talking about are these foundational compound movements. So the bottom of the pyramid should be strength. Strength training, barbell lifting is our model, okay? The next part of the pyramid they have is metabolic conditioning. I would say that the next part of the pyramid is probably nutrition. It's nutrition. The bottom of their pyramid is nutrition. Why? Because I know some crazy, freaky, fit, and strong individuals that have great blood work and they eat crap all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not all about nutrition. Is nutrition important? It's extremely important. It's extremely important that you eat good quality foods, that you eat a high enough protein level, enough grams of protein, that you get good, clean carbohydrates and good quality fats and all the minerals and vitamins. But even people who eat like crud, or no, let's rephrase it. Even people that eat like crap, that's what I want in there, can develop some great fitness and some crazy strength because they have just unbelievable genetics. And they're young. Usually they're young too.
Yeah, exactly.
As they get older, the diet becomes more and more important over time. And you know, obviously the diet is very important from when we're young, but once you exit adolescence, quality of diet is very important to predict disease processes and quality of bone structure and connective tissue and all these other things. We know. So I'm not saying nutrition is not necessarily one of the most important things, but you can still be strong and not have dialed your diet in fully.
Yeah. And we see this kind of anecdotally in starting strength in the, so Rip has a acronym he's used on his forums thousands of times.
Yeah.
YNDPT.
Yeah.
You're not doing the program, right?
Right.
And that either means you're not executing the lifts correctly, or you're not doing the programming correctly, or it could mean you're just not eating the calories.
You're not eating, you're not sleeping, you're not resting.
Yeah. People, they're just not eating enough calories, but guess what?
Yeah.
They still get stronger.
I know.
It works even with poor implementation. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that, the bottom of the pyramid is strength.
Yeah.
It's not nutrition. The second tier of the pyramid is nutrition.
Right.
And I do agree with what Hippocrates said, let food be thy medicine. I agree with that.
And medicine be thy food.
Exactly. And that is definitely true. But man, it's like the junkyard dog. I mean, you see some dog living out on the streets and they look pretty dang good,
right?
Because they're using their own genetics. I mean, they got this great gene. Now they're not maximizing their gene expression, but you give them good food and they work even better.
Yeah.
And they'll live a lot longer lifespan. And then the third thing on the pyramid would probably be, if we compared it to their pyramid, then we would say conditioning. It would be conditioning, which would be next. And conditioning would mostly be limited to high-intensity interval training, unless an individual had a specific sport where they need to go a lot longer in duration. And then you've got to throw some longer, slower distance workouts in there. Plain and simple, it's not just about getting way out there on the Krebs cycle and getting way out there on burning fats and in building endurance and aerobic capacity and cardiovascular capacity and everything. It's really about time on your tissue too.
Yeah.
If you're going to do some ultra marathons, you got to get your feet used to it. You got to get your skin used to it. You got to get your inner thighs used to it. You got to get the proper gear. You got to make sure you don't chafe your nipples.
Yeah, no cotton shirts. I think I talked about that before.
No, man, it's brutal.
I'll only do that once.
Yeah, exactly. And so you've got to get your tissue used to repetition and pounding. And so, and then, we know that the greatest effect to the lactate threshold, your cardiovascular endurance is strength training combined with high intensity interval training. It'll have more effect on your ability to be a better endurance athlete than doing strict endurance training alone.
Right.
So I have a PT that works for us. She's a doctor of physical therapy at one of our clinics, and she just ran the Boston. And
I saw that. Yeah,
she PR'd her time by 23 minutes. She's in her 40s, and she equates to this new PR two simple things she did. She ran more hill intervals, and she did barbell strength training. She still did her running program the normal way she did, but she barbell strength trained, and she ran more hill intervals, which would be high intensity work.
Right, yeah.
More strength biased or more power biased work.
Right.
And it had more influence. A 23-minute, in fact, her time was so good that she's already qualified for next year's Boston.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
She didn't have to run a qualifying race.
That's fantastic.
So I think the third thing on the pyramid would be conditioning. It would be conditioning work.
Yeah.
And I think when you talk about gymnastics and body weight work, that goes down at the bottom of the pyramid.
Yeah.
That's down there in the barbell training section, being able to do the basic human movements.
Right.
That's
think body awareness and being able to move correctly with good movement quality and
Hey man, I'm all into gymnastics. I was a high school gymnast. I was a club gymnast. I was a college gymnast. I'm all into gymnastics. But let's face it, most people have no business doing a muscle up and really serves no purpose. Most people have no business doing handstand push-ups, and it really serves no purpose.
I really want to do a backflip, but I'm probably not going to.
Yeah, I think you probably have enough power and strength right now to do it. Then you would just have to acquire the skill and get over your fear of spinning over backwards in the air. But we could do it. I could teach you how to do it. But I think that's, when you think about gymnastics, we're really just talking about being able to move your body weight in space and time.
Yeah.
And I think that goes down to the bottom of the pyramid, and it's kind of like right there with barbell. It's what we're trying to build more of with barbell training. But when you come to the gym, if you don't have that, then we've got to work that first. We got to be able to get you to basically handle your body weight because that's your load. And then we go to barbell training. And we hope most individuals, 9 out of 10 individuals, just go right into barbell training.
Right.
Now, in the elder population or the significantly deconditioned population or the obese population, we have to work that. But I know guys that are significantly obese and they can squat crazy amounts of weight, but they can't do a pull-up yet. So does that mean I don't have them barbell train yet? No, I have them barbell train, increase their lean mass, decrease their fat mass, control their nutrition, and then start working on their pull-ups.
So if I can kind of, and I don't even know that a pyramid is necessarily the right way to conceive of these different things, but let's just stick with that metaphor and let's compare the pyramids. What I see is on both sides is that you just made the case for strength, right? Strength work is approachable for the vast majority of people. It's titratable. It can be done very incrementally. Whereas like gymnastics work, there's certain things that the guy who weighs 400 pounds is just not going to be able to do for a long time, but he can do a barbell, right? He's not going to be able to do like plyometric type.
Yeah, but some of that's just nomenclature. They would throw in gymnastics. An air squat would be gymnastics.
Okay, sure.
So a step up would be gymnastics.
Yeah, so there's a difference in nomenclature, right? Yeah. But I think what's interesting is, when I see the starting strength world, the people who get really strong in the basic barbell exercises and they go through that novice progression, they end up very strong, very able. It's a fantastic foundation for them, and it's the best foundation that I see that anyone builds in any training modality. But they do tend to lack a breadth of skills, right? Coming out of that novice phase, right?
Yeah.
They're just not, they've learned the complicated movements of the compound.
They've learned the big compound movements.
Right. But they probably don't have, a lot of them don't have the ability to move their bodies with, like doing things outside, like doing footwork type things, right?
Then you're talking about skill acquisition or practice.
Skill acquisition, right.
That's mostly neurologically based.
Exactly. And so I see on the CrossFit side, you've got that earlier emphasis on skill acquisition, a broader base of skills, but at the expense of strength.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
And so what's interesting is, we've got two methodologies that are saying the same things, but placing different emphasis on where do we start.
Yeah, there are some differences in what we're saying too, but I think the bulk of what we're saying is that we want generally fitter people. We want people with better general fitness.
Yeah, exactly.
I just believe now
that fitness.
Right. I just think that strength is that foundation.
Right.
Strength is that foundation first, and that's body weight strength first, and then it's being able to handle an external load. And then the next important thing on the pyramid is what you eat, your nutritional intake. And the next important thing on the pyramid is going to be your conditioning. And then the next important thing on the pyramid is going to be life, recreation, and sport. That's how it rolls. That's the general hierarchy. And CrossFit's theoretical construct is nutrition, metabolic conditioning, gymnastics, weightlifting and throwing, and then sport on top of that. And so we have similar elements, but they apply weightlifting is way up at the top. It's like a top tier level. And we find that definitely not to be the case in our gyms. I think it's upside down. And if we approach it upside down, we have much better CrossFitters in 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
And we also have, I believe, fewer people getting injured because strength is the number one predictor of human physical variable to reduce injury by over 69% compared to everything else. Conditioning doesn't reduce injury as high. Flexibility, mobility, skill acquisition, practice, training, all those things.
Right. Yeah.
Strength,
yeah.
69%. So if it's the number one thing to reduce injury, new injury, and the risk of previous injury, if it's the number one predictive variable, why don't we focus on that first? That gives us the healthiest individual.
Yeah, and that gets back to what we've talked about, staying in the game. We talked about that a few episodes ago, right? Is that when we're trying to build fitness, general fitness in somebody, one of the most important variables is consistency.
Right.
And if we can keep somebody in the game
long enough,
then we'll do more for them than having, even if our programming is not that great. But if we keep them in the game and they're consistent and we keep them coming back, we've won.
Well, I mean, it's human nature that some people are just going to quit. That's just, let's not be Pollyannic about this. Some people are just going to quit. But I will say this, what I found in my membership ranks was that even with proper programming because there was so much high intensity interval training sometimes because that's what members wanted to do, and they would do those workouts. And if you didn't allow them to do it, then you kind of, they are your customer too. So I finally got to the point to where, you realize most of them stay in there an average of 16 to 18 months, and then they're just thrashed. I call it the Metallica syndrome. They're broken, beaten, and scarred. Yeah. They're just beat up.
Right.
And so I found that for the older individual too, and that's what we're talking about here on this podcast, but for all individuals, really, this is applicable across the board. The model's the same. But I found that for older individuals, I'm doing 2 days of barbell training a week right now, and I squatted 345 yesterday. I did 3 sets of 8 with 30 pounds on pull-ups, chin-ups, and I did 245 for close grip bench for 3 sets of 5. And then later in the week will be my deadlift day, and then I'll do a back off load on my squat, and I'll do a heavy press.
Sure.
I'll do 5 sets of 3 with 185 at the end of the week here. And so, but I found that doing that and a couple days of conditioning, I'm actually getting stronger over time, and I'm losing body fat. I'm leaning up. So I think that this idea that we have to train 5-6 days a week, and we have to do high intensity interval training, we have to feel like we've trashed it every single day and lay on the floor and our hands are all bloody and we're, sweat angeling every single day. I just don't think it's consistent with what humans can tolerate long term.
Yeah.
I used to say this, some of my members trained harder than an NFL athlete does, or that an NBA athlete does, or that a professional athlete does.
Yeah.
That's not sustainable with their genetics. It's not sustainable with the look at how many pro athletes suffer injury and have surgeries. So it's not sustainable with those genetics.
No.
And so it's just it's a problem with the methodology. And
so you put that down to, so would you say though that is more of a cultural thing that has grown within CrossFit, of like the coaches? So there's a certain expectation of the customers, of the clients, and then maybe the coaches are trying to meet that.
Our warm up is like their workout.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's a badge of courage.
Thing.
It's an elitist badge of courage.
But that's not necessarily where CrossFit started in terms of the foundational methodology, right?
No, I mean, it used to be. I remember when we used to do only HQ programming at our gym for several years, where we just went to CrossFit.com. We pulled the workout down
the main
on the day.
site
we did
programming.
Yeah,
yep.
And that day it might be 7 sets of 1 heavy deadlift. So you worked up to a max rep of, you did 7 sets of 1 rep with a progressively increasing load. And you worked up to a heavy single. And that was it that day. That was it.
Sure. Yep.
Now they'll have that plus a conditioning workout. That could be a high intensity interval couplet or a singlet or a triplet or a chipper or something, along with a warm-up that's going to take 15 to 20 minutes. That's like its own workout.
Yeah.
And it's just too much.
So over time, the sort of feedback loop of the, and how much do you think the games have contributed to that, right? Seeing very public, because the games are these brutal, long events.
Well, I used to say this, my members would go to they'd go travel somewhere, they'd be on a vacation somewhere, and they'd drop in at a box somewhere, a CrossFit gym. And they drop in a box, and then they would come back and say, "Oh man, we did this and we did this and we did this." I said, "I don't know how people sustain it. I don't know how people sustain it long term."
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that as a pussy. I'm not saying that as someone who couldn't train.
Right.
If I trained in my 3 gyms, I would definitely be within the top 5 males of my 3 gyms late into my 40s.
Yeah, yeah.
So I could still hold my own, but it was just, you just can't do that day in, day out. Your connective tissue, your tendon tie-ins, your ligamentous structural integrity, it's not the dosage. Here's the key.
Yeah.
And we've heard this in several different parts of our industry. The guys at Barbell Logic, Matt Reynolds and Scott Hembrick, did a podcast not too long ago about maximum effective dosage.
Yeah. Minimum effective dosage.
Minimum effective dosage, right. MED. But to be honest with you, there's a young lady on the West Coast who has had that on her website for years. Her last name is Twarkdonan's, her first name. She was in a plane crash recently and severely injured. And I haven't really heard about her status yet. I can't remember her first name for the life of me.
Ava?
Ava.
Yeah,
right.
Ava Twardokins.
Right.
Yeah.
Ava.
Skier, right?
Right. Yeah. She was a world-class Olympic skier. But she's been promoting that for years, and I've promoted that for a long time. But, the minimum effective dosage is all that's needed. It's very similar to medicine.
Yeah.
Why would we write a prescription for someone that's just overdosing them or underdosing them?
Sure.
And so science has to be used and logic and reason has to be used. And we have to pull ego away from it early on in the training process and not getting these guys and ladies coming into the gym thinking they're games athletes now.
Right.
And there's that mentality. There's that, trash it and thrash it mentality, who won the workout of the day.
Yeah, so you hit on it, right? And so that's where starting strength would say.
And I was just as guilty as anybody else in the worst, about that.
Yeah, and that's where starting strength would say, and I think this is a fundamental difference in the methodology, is that what you described, winning the workout, you're turning the workouts into a performance, an event, like a competition.
You're confusing training. You're confusing competition for training.
For training, exactly.
And they're not the same.
Exactly. So starting strength would say, look, no, you train using logical minimum effectively dosed workouts that logically step you from A to B to C to D to E all the way up to the event, which is the performance, which is the CrossFit Games,
or a local event, or whatever you're doing, or your sport event,
whatever.
Yeah, your sport event outside of CrossFit.
Exactly, and so the training does not look like the competition. It doesn't have to. It has to be general, to build the things you're going to need in the competition, and then as you approach the competition, then your training then at that very last bit becomes more specific to the actual thing you're going to do in competition.
Correct.
Right? But it doesn't from day one look like the competition.
No.
And that's a fundamental difference.
It does. You get locked into a mode of only improving to a certain level because that modality and that type of training can only make you so able. It's only going to get you to a certain performance level. And I've proven it time and time again that the key with a lot of those individuals is they're just under strength. They've got to build more strength and they'll be less injury prone and they'll have better body mass, better lean mass, better body composition. But I think that, the key there is basically it's a general difference in methodology, trying not to confuse competition with training, and then also recognizing that training individuals and the members, like we train the members in our gym, that there is a hierarchical structure where we differ in philosophy and methodology. We definitely differ in how we think about how the average individual should be approached. Now, what I'm not saying to all my CrossFit buddies out there and all these folks that I've known for years, I'm still a part of that community in regards to my certifications and I use a lot of the methodology. I mean, when you walk into our gym right now, there's a whiteboard behind me, behind this wall. And there's a conditioning workout posted because our ladies do conditioning on Wednesdays. And it looks very similar to a CrossFit workout. And the programming model is built off of CrossFit's programming model, off of their theoretical template, their programming template that they use, using the different elements and using the different metabolic pathways and using whether it's got gymnastics or weightlifting or monostructural work in it. A lot of that stuff I learned from that community and I use it on a day-to-day basis. But the foundation of our fitness model here is barbell strength training.
Right. Exactly.
And that's where we differ.
Now, I want to play the devil's advocate for a minute. One thing that I notice, and again, this is I find it hard to find any fault with the novice progression that starting strength is laid out, the novice LP that we talk about all the time. But when we get into what I call intermediate training, or what we call intermediate training rather, we reach that point where, as we've discussed in prior podcasts, how much strength is enough? What's strong enough? And everyone finds that balance point between, okay, I've reached my strength goals and I'm now very strong. Do I want to get stronger, or do I want to be generally fit, or do I want to go and do a specific sport or competition? And somewhere in that spectrum, there's a need, if the athlete's going to continue to develop, even if their goal is just general fitness, they've got to learn how to use the strength that they've acquired and to be, for lack of a better term, more functional, right? And when I say functional, I think that having a big deadlift is just about as functional as you can get, right? But we're talking now about the person who has the big deadlift, right? What do they do with it now? What do they do? And I find that a lot of intermediate trainees that don't have specific strength competition goals lack a breadth of physical skills to apply the strength that they've built. And I think that's something that CrossFit does very well. Everybody that I see that comes in that has CrossFit experience in our gym they've
applied it somewhere. A lot of them have.
They've applied it somewhere, right? And granted, they had a good coach. They had you as a coach previously, so they did the strength work, right? But they have a much higher level of body awareness, and they're able to move their bodies in space and do more complex movements much better than the person who's the intermediate that has only ever barbell trained, right?
Well, I think at some point you have to ask yourself, what am I doing this for? What is the why? What am I doing? I had to put a post on my personal Instagram just this morning or yesterday evening about, that there does come this point where every individual, and especially the older athlete, the older lifter, the older person, and that could be really, when you think about masters, anyone over 30 is a masters in most sports. All sports.
I know.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just the way it is, dude. And so, but when you think about it, individuals, you have to ask yourself, how much is enough? How much strength is enough? Quality of life, connective tissue health, all those things. And I put a post on there of me doing some squats and some chins and some bench press and kind of where I was at in my training and how I felt. But I'm kind of at that margin now where I recognize I can get stronger genetically, but why? Why do I need to be that much stronger? Someone would say, well, you need to be at your maximum strength. Not if my joints are hurting.
Right.
Not if I'm noticing a little bit of creep,
there is a
pain.
cost.
Yeah, a little bit of pain. I might need to back off a little bit and recognize that there's a sweet spot.
Right.
There's a spot where each individual's genetics can be maximized and they can be very reasonably strong, stronger than the general population or cohorts, and at the same time still keep their joint health and still be and have, really good underlying health for years and years and years to come. And that's what my goal is to present to people, is that this has to be done in a methodical manner. There does need to be some coaching and sometimes and some education. Individuals have to own this themselves too, and then apply that to their day-to-day programs. And that's our goal. Our goal is to provide all this information for you as the listener and our audience to take this information and run with it and develop a program that's well-balanced that you can then go out and use it in real life.
That's
if
right.
you're crazy strong, but you can't move very well because your joints are killing you, who cares?
Exactly.
I mean, I think it's cool that you're strong and it's better than not being strong. But the CrossFitter who's reasonably strong and less strong than you but can do more is in better position than you are.
Yeah.
So it's a balance. It really is a balance. And I think the goal is to have the best of both worlds, is to be reasonably strong, good body weight movement, good conditioning, and be able to go out and use it for recreation sport life.
Absolutely. That's what we're all about here in the 40 Fit Nation is sifting through all of the methodologies that are out there and helping you find what's going to work for you, that balance point, and drawing from everything we can. We understand that no model is perfect, and there are good things that we can pull from a lot of different models.
Yeah.
And so why not? Let's use them, right? Let's continue to evolve our model for training by taking the best of what we can find elsewhere. It's kind of like I can't remember the exact quote, but Bruce Lee said something about that. He's like, I learn from everything. I discard what is unnecessary and I take the best.
And look what came out of it, MMA.
Yeah.
I mean, look what came out of it. The perfect fighting sport, a combination of all the sports.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the challenges with particular movements, let's say, whether it be in the fitness world, the intellectual world, whatever, the spiritual world, whatever, particular movements is, once people think they've arrived or they have the model.
Yeah, this is the one.
They become elitist and they become very closed outside out ideas, even though they might be scientifically presented.
Right.
And so I think it's important for us as practitioners, as coaches, as professional coaches, sitting here doing this podcast, and that is being willing to look at alternative views and outside ideas, and then filtering that through with the knowledge base, the experience, the science that we have, as best we have. It's not perfect,
right?
But filtering that through and saying, does this add value to my client base? And if it does, then it's something that we need to look at, but we got to prioritize that stuff too. And that's what I've tried to do over the years, is just prioritize those things and say, you know what, even though I really do enjoy this, and I'm going to tell you, I'll be the first to tell you, I love doing a CrossFit workout. I could trash them, man. I can trash myself, I've done some workouts that would put most guys in the grave. And my training partners would tell you that. We have done some crushing workouts with heavy loads too, But I will tell you that, at some point at the end of the day, we got to figure out what works long term. And that's the goal, is figuring out what works long-term and what's sustainable. So if you're out there and you're in a CrossFit gym, talk to your coach, talk to your owner about maybe doing a more strength bias program if you think that's a need that you have. And if they don't respond to that need, then go find you another gym. Because if you really feel like that's a need and it's a true need, and then it needs to be met. And so there's a lot of times when we need to look at alternative views and then assess those and value those on their own merit. But hey, guys, thanks for joining us today on the 40 Fit Radio podcast. Man, this is a tough topic, but thanks for being a part of the 40 Fit Nation today. What Trent's about to say something.
Yeah, I'm just sitting over here. I'm thinking about the clickbaity title. I'm gonna give this one: Starting Strength versus CrossFit.
Yeah, no,
the final showdown.
That's terrible. What's that? What in game? No,
in game.
no.
Yeah,
But yeah, man, we enjoyed having you guys today. And our ultimate goal here at 40 Fit Radio is to always provide good science and reason and logic and information and experiential evidence, and then also content experts where available. If you'd like to reach out to us, go to 40fit.com, go to the 40 Fit Radio tab. You can go to our email. You send us an email at info@40fit.com. You can also go to Instagram at 40 Fit Radio. You can go to our personal Instagrams at Marmalade Cream for Coach Trent and at DL Deaton for myself. And you can go to Facebook community group, which is 40 Fit Masters Community. So, man, we loved having you guys today. Go out there, and thanks for being a part of the 40 Fit Nation.